Hi there, and welcome again to Ask a Lawyer here on CP24. John Scholes here. Momentarily, employment lawyer Lior Samfiru will join us and join you on your screen. Always want to tell you right off the top how to get a hold of Lior when we're not doing the show this half hour. It's a phone call and an email. Real simple, 1-855-821-5900. Ask at EmploymentLawyer.ca. And the only website you need to use when it comes to the topic of employment law always is PocketEmploymentLawyer.ca. Lior will exercise that in just a bit here on the show, as we always do with the Severance calculator, but that's coming in a few minutes. Want to remind you as well, you can always reach out to Lior anytime the show is not on with that phone number and email. Tonight on the show, a few phone calls we got to get to, some other questions, and always a main topic in our second segment, what your employer is legally not allowed to do. We'll get to that in just a bit, and some of these may surprise you, but that is all coming up. But we always get things warmed up, Lior. As you know, the case of the day, what's cooking on your end, pal? There he is.
Hey, John, great to be here to talk about this very, very important topic. We have a lot to cover on the show. We cover a lot on every show because I need to tell you a lot of things about your job, about your workplace rights, about the things that your employer may not want you to know if you are let go, if you're laid off, if you're put on a suspension, if your job is changed, if your compensation is changed, and of course if you're being mistreated in the workplace. You need to know your rights. Everyone should know their rights. Well, a good, reliable way to do that without wondering if it's true is on the show. By watching us, you will learn all the information you need to learn about your rights, and you'll know what to do if you're facing a workplace problem. Sometimes bad things happen in the workplace. It's not always just going to be great and comfortable. Well, now at least you'll know what to do, what your rights are, what does it mean, and you won't have to be feeling like you're alone with this workplace issue. Of course, in this 30 minutes, we'll try to impart as much knowledge as we can, but beyond the 30 minutes, if you want to continue the conversation, reach out to me. Let's have a private chat. Let's talk about your workplace rights and make sure that you don't feel like you're alone, because you're not. But case of the day, where I always like to start off when it comes to employment law. I spoke with a lady who had worked as a bookkeeper with the same company for about 8.5 years. Now, for the 8.5 years that she worked there, it's a long time, she was always treated as an independent contractor. Well, recently she came to learn that, wait a second, I don't think I am. I think I'm really an employee, and I should be getting paid for overtime and vacation pay and holiday pay, etc. So she went to her employer and said, well, employer, I don't think I'm a contractor. I think I'm an employee. You've misclassified me. So we need to talk about amounts that are owing to me, vacation pay, etc. Her employer dismissed the idea right off pan, said, absolutely not going to happen. You're a contractor, and I don't know why you would say otherwise. Well, she said to the employer, well, I'm then going to have to file a claim with the Ministry of Labor. I'm going to tell the government, complain against you for not paying me what you're supposed to, for misclassifying me. Well, wouldn't you know, at the end of this conversation, that company turns around and lets her go. Says, well, if you don't want to work here, if you think we owe you amounts, and if you're not grateful for everything we've done for you, we're letting you go. Today's your last day. Off you go. No, she thankfully calls me. And here's the thing, John. Of course she was misclassified. She was not a contractor. She worked for 8.5 years, essentially full-time hours with the same companies. She was an employee. She couldn't be more of an employee if she tried. It's a very common situation. People are misclassified. They believe they're contractors, but in the eyes of the laws, they're employees. Well, for her, that means that she was owed vacation and overtime, etc. And because they fired her when she tried to enforce those rights, that's called a reprisal. It's illegal. You cannot be punished ever for trying to enforce your employment law rights. It's illegal to do that. So it's reprisal. They owe her outstanding vacation and overtime. And of course, now they also owe her severance, because you can't let go an employee without paying full severance. For her, that's probably 9 or 10 months pay. So there's a lot of amounts owing to this lady. I'm going to help her get that. This employer really, really messed up here, did it wrong. But at least now you understand the idea of misclassification, the idea of reprisal, and of course the notion that you are owed severance if you lost your job, even if the company calls you a contractor.
Good stuff, Lior. And as I mentioned off the top, always reach out to Lior and his team if you're ever not wondering if this applies to you or anything else with your job as well. Reach out first. Don't sit there and wonder. Phone calls, by the way, we get them through the radio show. You'll want to tune into one of our shows, EmploymentLawyer.ca, to find a station near you. We got great phone calls. They provide a lot of helpful info as well, Lior. So the first phone call for this show is coming up right now. Listen up.
I work as a technology sales representative. We sold all sorts of technology utilized in schools for education. I worked for that company for 2.5 years, and then I was let go. The reasoning was kind of vague to me, but understood that education has been hit by the cap on international students. The company's not making as much money, so they have to let people go. I was given my severance, the 2.5 weeks pay, but I'm not sure if they were even allowed to do that to begin with.
Well, the fact that they let him go is not a legal issue. It's not illegal. They're allowed to let him go, whether they're suffering financially or not. A company is allowed to let him go. He may feel it's unfair, and he may be right. It may be unfair, but legally they can still do that as long as severance is paid. So the real issue for this person is, after 2.5 years, does he only get 2.5 weeks of severance? Of course not. He gets much more, significantly more. So I'm going to show you how much severance he actually gets and how you can find out how much severance you're owed. We're going to use the severance calculator. You'll find that at PocketEmploymentLawyer.ca. We're going to use that right now, and let's see what this person gets, because yeah, it's not 2.5 weeks. In a sales role, he's been there for 2 years or so, 47 years of age. The right amount, you see at the bottom of the screen there, is 3 to 5 months of severance. Not weeks, but months. So he's been wrongfully dismissed because he's owed much more severance. You could do the same if you lost your job or just want to find out how much you're owed. Go to PocketEmploymentLawyer.ca, use the severance calculator, and find out the real amount.
All right, Lior, good stuff. We've got to take our first break, short one here. When we come back, our main topic, what your employer legally can't do. That is on the other side as we continue Ask a Lawyer right here on CP24, so stay with us.
Lost your job? Disability denied? Ask a Lawyer is here for you. Each week, experts from EmploymentLawyer.ca answer your questions. Visit cp24.com/askalawyer and watch Mondays and Wednesdays at 9 p.m. on CP24.
Okay, and we're back. Thank you so much for hanging through the break here. Ask a Lawyer, CP24. Lior Samfiru, Employment Lawyer, of course. That's the whole point of this show. Always reachable beyond the half hour. Here's how you do it. Phone number right there, 1-855-821-5900. Email to go with, ask@employmentlawyer.ca, and scan that QR code on the top right of your screen. Okay, Lior, main topic time. I love this one this week. Things your employer can't legally do. Number one, a big one, force you to accept a new employment contract. Lots of red flags with this one, right?
Huge red flags all over, really. Anytime your employer asks you to sign a new employment agreement, it's bad news. An employment agreement can only benefit the employer. So if your employer asks you to sign a new agreement, whether it's random or maybe it's at a time of promotion, it's because that employer wants to take away certain rights that you would automatically have. It could limit your future severance. It could give the company the right to put you on a temporary layoff, to reduce your pay, to change your hours. All these things that the company cannot do unless you sign an employment agreement that gives them that right. So if you are asked to sign a new employment agreement, it's almost guaranteed to be because it's more restrictive than what you currently have. But here's the good news. Your employer cannot force you to sign that agreement. A perfectly good answer is, thanks, but no thanks. I'm not doing that. I'm happy with my current arrangement. And your employer cannot fire you for cause, cannot suspend you, and they cannot do anything bad in that sense. Of course, I'm happy to review that agreement with you in advance, but generally speaking, if you're being told sign an employment agreement, the answer should be no. Trust me, it's bad news.
Here's something else that your employer is not allowed to do, Lior, and that is give your duties to somebody else, which, right off the top, you're thinking, what, I have to do less? Awesome. I'm all in for that, but not so fast, right?
Well, here's the thing. If your employer wants you to do less and it's not embarrassing and they're paying you the same, yeah, they can do that and you'll be happy to accept. So we don't have an issue there. Where the issue comes up is if now it's seen as an embarrassment, it's a demotion, it suggests that you've done something wrong, or maybe that reduces your compensation or changes your hours because your employer decided to give duties to someone else. Well, wait a second. That's a big change in terms of employment, and that could absolutely be a constructive dismissal. That means you can consider that a termination and get your full severance, up to 24 months pay, of course. So really the context here is important. But to do something that's demeaning, that's considered a demotion, that changes your pay or your hours, not something your employer is allowed to do. Think constructive dismissal.
We're talking points here about things your employer can't legally do, and our third and final one is the big one. I mean, it's the genesis of our entire show years ago on radio as well, and that's give you less severance you are legally owed, right?
Keep in mind, it's not your employer's decision how much severance to give you. Your employer has no say in that. They don't get to sit down and think what is appropriate. None of that. The law takes care of that. And an employer has to abide by the law. And we have several sources of laws that decide how much severance you're owed. The severance that you're owed is based on a number of factors, including your age, your position, the length of your employment, and a few other factors. In 90% of cases, 90%, the severance that an employer offers is less than what you're legally owed. That is a wrongful dismissal. So remember, you're owed probably a heck of a lot more severance than what your employer is offering. What they've offered you is not up to them, which means they can't do that if they're paying less than what they're owed. You don't have to sign by that deadline. Your legal rights don't expire Friday. Make sure you do the right thing. You get some advice. You call me so we can make sure you get what you're owed.
Okay, Lior, we went through that nice and smoothly, which means we actually have time to get to another phone call from one of our radio shows. So here we go. Let's get into it.
I have submitted multiple email requests to HR for accommodation due to a medical condition. The company hasn't responded to any of them or my follow-up calls. However, my manager has just requested a morning meeting next Thursday along with a member of HR. Should I be worried?
Well, time will tell, because it's possible that the purpose of that meeting is to finally say, yeah, here's the accommodation we're going to provide you. Here's what the information is, and here's what we're going to do for you. So that could be a very good meeting. But here's the thing. Your employer cannot punish you because you need accommodation. They can't refuse that. Your employer has a duty to accommodate you if you have a medical condition. They can't refuse, they can't punish you, they can't deny it, they can't ask for another opinion. They must accommodate if at all possible. Even if it's not easy to accommodate, they still have to do it. So if you go to that meeting and the answer is anything other than yes, we will accommodate you and here's how, potentially what you're looking at there is a human rights violation. Remember, you need a doctor's note to trigger that accommodation. And if your employer won't accommodate, call me. Trust me, once they hear from me, that accommodation will happen very quickly.
All right, we'll keep it going here. As you may know by now, the other half, 50% of what Lior's firm does as well is disability law. Why? Because disability law and employment law often go hand in hand. We will cover that on the other side of a short break, so stay around. Lots more Ask a Lawyer on CP24 is just ahead.
Lost your job? Disability denied? Ask a Lawyer is here for you. Each week, experts from EmploymentLawyer.ca answer your questions. Visit cp24.com/askalawyer and watch Mondays and Wednesdays at 9 p.m. on CP24.
Okay, we are back on Ask a Lawyer here on CP24. Again, as I mentioned before the break, half of what Lior and the firm do is disability law. You can always reach out to Lior and his team in that regard as well. Same phone number, right? 1-855-821-5900. But for the purpose of the next few minutes and ongoing, if you want to reach that into the firm, it is ask@disabilityrights.ca. And again, scan that QR code there as well. So Lior, we always, for those who aren't familiar with that half of the firm and what we talk about beyond employment law, maybe give us a quick, Cole's notes on what you do as far as the disability stuff is concerned, yeah?
John, someone asked me just the other day why my firm focuses specifically on employment law and disability law. And really the answer to that is it's the whole David versus Goliath thing. With employment law, you have this big employer, you may feel helpless, but you have rights and you have ways to enforce rights. But the same thing is true when it comes to disability. You may have on one hand an insurance company that doesn't want to abide by its obligations. They don't feel you're disabled enough. They don't feel that you qualify for disability benefits. And you may think, well, I'm the little guy. How am I going to fight this insurance company? The good news is you have two great tools at your disposal. Number one, the law. The law is on your side. The law is telling the insurance company can't do that. And the second tool, of course, is us. We're the tool that you can use to deal with the insurance company. Once they hear from us, they do the right thing, they back off, they pay what they need to pay because the law is on your side and we know how to enforce it. So if you've been denied disability coverage, long-term disability, short-term disability, CPP disability benefits, let's talk. In the vast majority of cases, we're able to help. We're able to reinstate benefits, to activate benefits, or to get compensation. So don't take that denial. Don't accept it. Don't assume there's nothing that you can do or take it as a fact. It's not a fact. The law is still on your side, and you can still get those disability benefits.
And fortunately, Lior, we're a pleasure to have a phone call which illustrates a lot of what you just talked about on the show this week. So let's get to that. Listen up.
I was in a car accident a few months ago, and it's been rough recovering. I was approved for short-term disability at first, but now that it's run out, my long-term disability claim got denied, even though my doctor still says I can't work. On top of that, I'm barely getting any help from my car insurer. I'm just stuck between both of them, and I'm starting to panic. What are my options now?
Well, John, that's not an accident, this scenario. It's not by chance that she's stuck between the two of them. It's designed to frustrate her, to think, well, it's this person's fault, it's that person's fault, and in the meantime, she's stuck without compensation, even though she cannot work. Here's the good news. The good news is we can deal with both insurers. After a car crash, she is owed support. She's owed medical benefits and compensation. A long-term disability insurer is often going to say, no, you're not disabled enough. It's someone else's problem, not ours. Nonsense. If you can't work and your doctor says you can't work, they should be paying, okay? It's just designed to frustrate here. So what I say in this situation, let us deal with the insurance companies, okay? Don't deal with them yourself because they'll feel that they have the power over you. They know they don't have the power over us. Let us deal with your insurance company, whether it's a disability insurance company, an auto insurance company. Let us make sure that they pay what they're owed. It's not going to be that difficult once we get involved.
And a reminder, when you call Lior and the team about a disability matter, same number, the consultations are free, so don't worry about that. Pick up a phone and use it. Question along the same lines, Lior says this: is there a time limit to challenge a denial or cutoff of disability benefits? What do you think?
So the time limit is 2 years from the very first time you've been denied any benefits. But that could be tricky because sometimes it's not clear that you've been denied. Well, we're not going to pay you now, but we're going to look into some other stuff. And depending on how the insurance phrase it, it may not sound like a denial. And before you know it, you're kind of running out of time. Don't wait. Okay, let's make sure that as soon as your insurance company says, we're not paying you, there's going to be an interruption. Let's talk. Let's make sure that there's no gap. You're not spending time waiting for these benefits. Let's make sure that that gets done quickly. Yeah, there's a 2-year time period. Don't wait. Don't wait a week even. Let's make sure we deal with it right away.
We appreciate your phone calls and emails every week on the show here, so thank you for that in advance of our next segment, which we're going to take a short break. Back to employment law, and yeah, we're going to get to one final phone call for the week, so stick around. Ask a Lawyer on CP24. We are coming right back.
Lost your job? Disability denied? Ask a Lawyer is here for you. Each week, experts from EmploymentLawyer.ca answer your questions. Visit cp24.com/askalawyer and watch Mondays and Wednesdays at 9 p.m. on CP24.
All right, welcome back to Ask a Lawyer. Got a couple minutes to go here. We're going to wrap things up with a phone call. Always reach out to Lior, by the way, when we're not doing the show, and in between, 1-855-821-5900. Ask at EmploymentLawyer.ca. It is just that simple. That last phone call for this week is coming up right now. Lior, listen up.
I have been approached by my employer to transfer from a job that I've been doing with the company for 8 years to an inside job. So it'd be a new pay package, a new contract, and all of that. I would go from 6 figures down to whatever we haven't agreed on yet. And I'm wondering about how that would affect my severance, all things being equal.
So here's what this means. If you're taking a job that pays you less, potentially you're going to give up future severance because severance is calculated based on your income at the time. So if you're taking a pay cut, you're also getting less severance down the road. So if you ultimately decide this role is not for you, remember, your employer can't impose on you a new role that results in a pay cut. If they try, that would be a constructive dismissal. Your employer can't do that. So the last thing we would need to figure out, if your employer says we're imposing this and it's a constructive dismissal, how much severance are you owed? We're going to go back to PocketEmploymentLawyer.ca and use the severance calculator, and let's see what this person would be looking at for severance. 61 years of age, professional, been there for 8 years. Severance for him would be between 14 to 16 months pay. That's what's at stake. For you, again, is at home. It's free and anonymous. Check out PocketEmploymentLawyer.ca and use the severance calculator.
Always great to have this many phone calls on the show. You can always send them along. You tune into one of our radio shows, EmploymentLawyer.ca, to do exactly that. Beyond that, always reach out to Lior and his team before you sign anything, before you do anything. Get some advice. That phone call one more time, 1-855-821-5900. Back it up with the email, ask@employmentlawyer.ca. And for all other information, cp24.com/askalawyer. That's how you reach out. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll do it all again next week. Enjoy the rest of your week.